Your Honor, with all due respect, I have friends at the top of this food chain. One phone call and this whole thing disappears. That was the first thing out of his mouth. Not hello, not good morning, not any kind of basic respect for this court. Just a threat. I have sat on this bench for a long time. I have seen arrogance walk through that door in many different shapes. Rich arrogance, young arrogance, powerful arrogance. But I want to tell you something. The most dangerous kind of arrogance is the kind that comes dressed in a badge and a government salary, because that person believes they are protected. They believe the rules were written for everyone else but them. My name is Judge Frank Caprio. This is Providence Municipal Court, and the man standing in front of me right now is about to find out something very important. In this room there is only one set of rules, and those rules apply to every single person who walks through that door. I don't care who you know. I don't care what title you carry. I don't care how many phone calls you think you can make. Justice is not a favor. Justice is not a negotiation. Justice is not something you can trade away over lunch with the right people. If you believe that no one, absolutely no one, should be above the law, then stay with me, because what happens in the next few minutes is something I will never forget, and I promise you neither will he. Bailiff Marcus Webb called the case in his steady professional voice. Case number 2026 TR 4471, the state versus Agent Roland Decker. I looked down at my papers. Then I looked up. Roland Decker, 44 years old, DEA special agent. That means a federal drug enforcement officer, assigned to a regional task force here in Providence. 17 years on the job. A man who had built an entire career on upholding the law. And here he was, standing in my courtroom, facing a civilian complaint. I greeted him the way I greet everyone. Mr. Decker, good morning. Do you understand why you're here today? He straightened his jacket. He looked around the gallery, the rows of people who come to watch these cases, like he was checking to see if anyone recognized him. He wore a pressed gray suit, a silver watch on his left wrist that I later learned cost more than $4,000. His hair was neat. His shoes were polished. He looked like a man who had never lost anything in his life. I understand there's been some kind of misunderstanding, Your Honor, he said. His voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of voice that was used to being believed without question. I did not smile. We'll see about that, I said quietly. Let's hear from the complainant first. Her name was Doria Castillo, 51 years old. She walked slowly to the stand because of the cane she used on her right side. She had been in a car accident 3 years before this day. Not the accident in front of us, but a different one. That earlier crash had left her with a permanent knee injury. She walks with pain every single day. Doria worked as a home health aide. That means she goes to people's houses and helps them with basic daily needs, bathing, medicine, meals, when they can no longer do those things themselves. She made just under $28,000 a year doing this work. She took care of 4 clients. 2 of them were elderly veterans. She called them by their first names. She brought them soup from her own kitchen when they were sick. 3 weeks before this court date, Doria was driving her 2014 Honda Civic on Merchant Street. She had just finished a 12-hour shift. She was tired. But she was driving carefully, within the speed limit, following all the rules. A black SUV ran a red light at the Merchant and Callaway intersection and clipped the rear side of her car. The impact sent her Civic spinning into a guardrail. Her cane fell across the floor. The airbag didn't go off because the hit wasn't straight on, but her head struck the side window. She had a concussion, a brain injury from the impact, and her knee, the already injured one, was re-injured badly enough to require 2 weeks off work. 2 weeks off work meant 2 weeks without pay. 2 weeks without pay for a woman making $28,000 a year meant real financial suffering. The driver of the black SUV got out of the vehicle. He looked at her car. He looked at her, still dazed inside it. And then, according to Doria, he said something that she would not forget. "Don't bother filing anything, I'll make it go away." Then he showed her his badge. I want you to sit with that for a moment. A woman who had just been hurt, who was sitting in a damaged car, who was dizzy from a head injury, and the first thing the man who hit her did was flash a badge and tell her to stay quiet. That man was Roland Decker. Now, if this story is already making your blood pressure rise, you are not alone. I felt it too. But I need you to stay with me, because what happens next, the evidence, the escalation, the moment where everything falls apart for Mr. Decker, is something you need to witness for yourself. Hit that like button right now if you believe that a badge should stand for protection, not intimidation. Subscribe so you don't miss a single word of what comes next. Because trust me, it gets much worse before it gets better. I asked Mr. Decker how he responded to Ms. Castillo's account. He shrugged. Actually shrugged. She's exaggerating, he said. It was a minor fender bender. I was on my way to a meeting. I gave her my card and told her we'd sort it out. I looked at Doria. She shook her head slowly. He did not give me a card, Your Honor, she said. He told me I didn't want to make trouble for myself. That was the first escalation and a small one, but I felt it in the room. The gallery shifted slightly in their seats. I said, Mr. Decker, I'd like you to think very carefully about your next words. He did not look worried. Officer Tamara Phelps, who had responded to the scene, then presented evidence number 1. It was the traffic camera footage from the Merchant and Callaway intersection. The footage was clear. It showed Mr. Decker's black government-issued SUV entering the intersection at 6:47 p.m. The light had been red for exactly 2 seconds before he entered. His speed was measured at 41 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. I watched the screen. The jury, in this case the record and the court, watched the screen. We all saw the same thing. Roland Decker ran a red light. He was speeding, and he hit Doria Castillo's car. There was no ambiguity. That word means there was no room for a different explanation. It was plain as day. I asked Mr. Decker if he had any response to the footage. Cameras malfunction all the time, he said flatly. The second escalation. I set my pen down. Mr. Decker, I said, are you suggesting that the city's traffic camera system malfunctioned, the timestamp was wrong, and the speed reading was incorrect, all at the same time? He met my eyes. I'm suggesting that I have 17 years of service and a record that speaks for itself, and I think this court should weigh that against the word of a single complainant. A few people in the gallery made sounds, not loud, but I heard them. This was the second escalation, the authority challenge. He was not just denying the evidence. He was asking me to use his credentials to outweigh it. He was asking me to tip the scales. I said very calmly, that's not how this court works. He smiled slightly, like he had heard that before and wasn't worried. Then Officer Phelps introduced evidence number 2. After the accident, when Doria refused to stay quiet, when she filed a formal complaint the very next morning, despite her concussion and her pain and her fear, something interesting happened. Her supervisor at the home health agency received a phone call. The caller identified himself as a federal officer. He said that one of their employees was known to have substance abuse issues and had been flagged in a federal database. Her supervisor was told that employing her could create liability for the agency. That word, liability, means legal risk or responsibility. Doria was placed on unpaid administrative leave 3 days after filing her complaint. The phone records, subpoenaed by the complainant's attorney, subpoenaed means legally demanded by court order, showed that the call to Doria's employer came from a number registered to Roland Decker's personal cell phone. The room went cold, and I mean that. When I looked up from those records, the room had changed. The light felt different. The air felt different. People were sitting very still. I looked at Roland Decker. For the first time, something moved across his face. It wasn't guilt. Not yet. It was calculation. He was working out his next move like a chess player who had just lost a major piece but hadn't given up on winning. He leaned slightly toward his attorney, who whispered something. Then Mr. Decker stood straight again. Your Honor, he said, I think we both know how these things work. I've sat across from the DA's office. I've worked with federal prosecutors in this very city. I have relationships that go all the way to Washington. I'm not saying that as a threat. I'm saying it as a reality. This case touching my record, my career, that's not something that benefits anyone. There it was, out in the open now, polished and smooth, but unmistakable. He was not asking me to listen to the evidence. He was asking me to think about consequences. His consequences, not Doria's. I want to stop right here and say something directly to you. You are watching this moment happen. You are seeing a man, in a court of law, in front of a judge, in front of witnesses. Tell a judge to think carefully about who he knows. Think about who in your life has ever said something like that. Think about every person who ever used a position of power to make someone smaller feel afraid. Are you with me? Then drop a comment right now with the word justice if you believe what he just did crossed every single line. I want to know who is standing in this courtroom with me today, because what happens in the next few minutes is what this entire channel exists for. I did not raise my voice. I said, Mr. Decker, are you attempting to influence this court? I'm providing context, Your Honor. Are you? Then Officer Phelps introduced evidence number 3. Doria's attorney had contacted 2 former colleagues of Roland Decker. Both had agreed to provide written statements. Both were current or former federal employees who had interacted with Decker professionally. The first statement described an incident 18 months earlier, a traffic stop that Decker had been involved in off-duty. A civilian had been issued a citation. When the civilian tried to contest it, they received a visit at their home from an unidentified man who left a business card with only a number. The civilian dropped the contest. The second statement was from a former task force partner, someone who had worked alongside Decker for 4 years. This person stated in writing under penalty of perjury, which means lying could result in criminal charges, that Decker had on multiple occasions made statements about using his position to handle personal matters. The partner had reported this internally. The report had been buried, and then came the audio. Doria, after receiving the call from her supervisor about being placed on leave, had called Decker directly. She had her phone recording the call. In that audio, Roland Decker said, in his own voice, clear as morning, "You want your job back? Then you want this complaint to go away. You think I don't know people at your agency? You think I can't make your life more complicated than it already is? I've done 17 years of real work, lady. You've done nothing but file a piece of paper. Think about which one of us is going to be standing at the end of this." The courtroom was silent, complete silence. I counted to 10 in my head. I do that sometimes. I let silence do its work because silence has a weight that words sometimes cannot carry. Then someone in the gallery, I don't know who, exhaled audibly, and then the murmuring started, low at first, then rising. I raised my hand. The room quieted. I looked at Roland Decker. He was still standing straight, but there was a tightness around his jaw now. His silver watch caught the courtroom light. It was time. Roland Decker, I want to speak directly to you right now. You came into this room this morning like you were doing us a favor by being here. You shrugged at a woman's pain. You called her exaggeration. You sat in my court and used the word relationships like it was a weapon. So let me ask you something, Roland. Where were your relationships when Doria Castillo was sitting in a damaged car with a concussion, on her way home from 12 hours of caring for people who couldn't care for themselves? Where were your connections when her knee, already injured from someone else's carelessness, was hurt again because you were 11 miles per hour over the speed limit and you couldn't wait 3 more seconds for a red light to change? You called her nothing but a piece of paper. Roland Decker, that woman woke up before 6 in the morning on the day you hit her. She drove to an elderly veteran's home and helped him take his medication and eat his breakfast and feel like a human being. She did that for 12 hours, and then she drove home carefully and within the law, and your SUV took that careful, law-abiding drive and turned it into a medical emergency and 2 weeks of financial suffering, and your response was a badge and a phone call to her employer. You have 17 years of service. I will not pretend that doesn't count for something. But Roland, and I want you to hear this clearly, service is not a coupon. You do not get to redeem it when it is inconvenient to be accountable. Service means that you, more than anyone else in this room, should understand what it means to protect someone instead of threatening them. You used a system that was built to protect people as a tool to protect yourself. That is not a mistake. That is not a lapse in judgment. That is a choice. Every step you took after that accident was a deliberate choice. You chose not to check on her. You chose to use your badge. You chose to call her employer. You chose to threaten her on a recorded line. And today, you chose to stand in my court and suggest that your connections should change my verdict. Roland Decker, I want you to look at Doria Castillo. Look at her cane. Look at her hands. Look at her face. That woman did not come here looking for money or fame or revenge. She came here because she believed that this room, this court, was the one place where none of that would matter, where a cane would be treated with the same dignity as a silver watch. And she was right. Now, Roland Decker, I have heard the evidence, I have heard the audio, I have read the statements, and I am going to tell you exactly what is going to happen. Number 1, for the moving violation, running a red light while speeding, you will pay a fine of $850. That money will go directly to the city's road safety fund. Number 2, your driving privileges in the state of Rhode Island are suspended for 18 months, effective immediately. You may apply for a restricted license for work-related travel only after 9 months, provided you complete a safe driving course. 8 hours in person, not online. Number 3, you are ordered to perform 240 hours of community service. Specifically, you will report every Saturday morning to Sunrise Home Care Services on the east side of Providence. You will assist home health aides on their rounds. You will help them carry supplies. You will sit with clients who are lonely. You will learn, with your own hands, what it means to do the work that Doria Castillo does. This assignment will be supervised by Director Yvonne Marsh, who will submit monthly reports to this court. Number 4, you will write a handwritten apology to Doria Castillo. Not typed, not through your attorney, handwritten. It will be reviewed by this court before delivery. It must be a minimum of 2 pages. It must acknowledge specifically what you did, the accident, the badge, the phone call to her employer, the audio recording. No vague language, no if you were offended, clear and specific acknowledgement. Number 5, you will contact Doria Castillo's employer in writing, also reviewed by this court, and you will correct the false statements you made about her. You will make clear that she has no record of any kind in any federal database. You will request her immediate reinstatement with full back pay for the 2 weeks she lost. Number 6, you will pay restitution. That means money paid directly to the person you harmed, in the amount of $4,200, covering her medical expenses, vehicle repair, and lost wages. Now, regarding your conduct in this courtroom today, when you suggested that your connections should influence this proceeding, you crossed into contempt of court. That means disrespecting and interfering with the process of justice. I do not take that lightly. Bailiff Marcus Webb, please approach. Marcus stepped forward. I watched Roland Decker's face change for the first time. The calculation was gone. Something raw was there now. Mr. Decker, you are being held in contempt of court. You will be remanded, that means taken into custody, for 48 hours, beginning immediately. Your review hearing is scheduled for March 14th, at which time your compliance with all other orders will be assessed. Marcus fastened the handcuffs with calm efficiency. The silver watch caught the light one more time. Decker did not say anything. For the first time since he walked in, he had nothing to say. The room was quiet, a different kind of quiet this time. Doria sat very still. She held her cane in both hands. Her eyes were steady. 6 weeks later, I received a report from Director Yvonne Marsh at Sunrise Home Care Services. Roland Decker had shown up every Saturday. He had not been late once. He had, according to Director Marsh, been initially silent and mechanical in his work, going through the motions. But by the 4th week, something had shifted. One of the elderly clients, a man named George, had started talking to him during a Saturday visit. George was a retired postal worker, arthritis in both hands. He told Decker stories about his route in the old days. Decker had listened. By week 6, Decker was arriving 15 minutes early. Director Marsh wrote, I cannot say with certainty what has changed in this man, but I can say that he asked me last Saturday if there was any way to increase his hours. I read that report twice. I thought about what justice is really for. It is not only for punishment. Punishment alone is just pressure without direction. Justice at its best is supposed to redirect a person, point them back towards something they forgot or maybe never learned. Roland Decker came into my courtroom believing that power was a door that opened from the outside in, that if you knew the right people, you could walk through any door you wanted. What he found instead was a mirror, and what Doria Castillo found was exactly what she came looking for. I sat alone at my bench after the last case of that day. The room was empty. The gallery chairs were still. Late afternoon light came through the high windows at an angle, laying long rectangles across the floor. I thought about service, real service, the kind that doesn't come with a watch or a title or a list of names in Washington, the kind that comes with a cane and an early alarm and soup from your own kitchen. I thought about what it costs a person to walk into a room and say, "I was hurt, and I believe this room will listen." That courage deserves to be honored every single time. There is no connection strong enough, no phone call important enough, no career prestigious enough to change that. Not in my courtroom, not while I have breath in my body, because the day we start weighing one person's dignity against another person's contacts is the day justice stops being justice and becomes something much darker. You came here today because you believe in fairness. So do I. Never stop believing it.